talk to the legends of the creative and entertainment industries. We talk to those on the rise. Steen Anthony Nielsen asks about the highs, the lows, and everything in between. This is Outcast Creative, and this is Industry Interviews.
Hello and welcome to a rescheduled industry interview. This was supposed to be taking place last night at 8 o'clock, but due to personal circumstances, I had to travel elsewhere in London and was not able to get back in time for that slot. So we decided to reschedule. So my apologies to the people who turned up, and I know there were a few of you who turned up wanting to watch yesterday's interview. But there's two interviews I had to reschedule this week. This was one of them, and the second one was with King Nicky, which is happening on Sunday at 10 p.m. Also, to let you know, I have a surprise unscheduled. Well, when I say unscheduled, it was unscheduled until about an hour ago. Interview tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. So still when Endo is up and about, so maybe he'll be in the chat. But tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I'm interviewing the godfather of the rave scene, none other than DJ Slipmat himself. This is the only time he's available to do an interview with me. You're talking about a guy who's DJ'd in Ibiza 500 times. He's doing all the major house day rave events in London at the moment. And he's also produced music tracks which have been in the charts. He's been an integral part of the music culture scene in the UK since the late 80s. So he's going to be a really interesting guest, and we'll talk to him tomorrow. Far removed from the world of my guest today, but you know how it is. I like to interview creatives across the board, especially people who's maybe need a bit of a boost or a push in terms of getting their wares seen by a wider audience. And one group of creatives that I'm particularly fond of supporting is independent authors, because I am an independent author, as many of you will know. Now, I've written several books. Now, because I'm a bit wheezy and getting over an absolutely horrendous bug, today I'm assisted by the Queen of the Catechus, Rachel Percy.
Hello.
Hello. Excellent. So if you hear a bell jingling occasionally in the stream, it's not, don't adjust your monitor. It's simply because Rachel's cat is going to be jumping on her head occasionally in the background.
No lie.
No lie. Thank you so much for coming on, because I think from time to time I will need to switch the camera off and drink lots of water to keep the throat lubricated and all that kind of thing. So very much appreciate you coming on. But you're also a big fan of fantasy novels and that kind of stuff.
Yes. Oh my goodness. That's definitely my genre. That is what I love.
Do you have, before we bring our guest on and hear their kind of experiences in this milieu, do you have a favourite fantasy book of all time? I mean, let's exclude Lord of the Rings, because that's what a lot of people tend to say.
Oh,
do you have another one? Well, I'm just going to say, apart from Lord of the Rings, I'll accept it as a given that Lord of the Rings is probably one of your favourite fantasy books of all time. But do you have another one? Trilogy or single novel, whichever.
Oh my God, that is hard.
I'm putting you on the spot now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Daughter of the Forest by Juliet. I can't remember her last name right now.
Okay.
But I read that book until it fell apart and I had to replace it. So
I do love it when you get books like that.
Yep. I'm on my third copy, actually.
Bang. I'm on my third copy of A Bridge Too Far, so there we go. Well, look, without any further delay, let's bring in our guest and hear a little bit about their upbringing. Ross Hughes is a young, emerging high fantasy author. I think we're going to get into that term in just a minute. He has got several books available on Amazon. Most of them interconnect to a fantasy world that is all of his own creation. Like many other people, the publishers were not opening the doors for him, and he did what many of us have done. He got off his arse, didn't complain, and said, right, well, I'm going to do this myself. And I'm particularly impressed with the quality of the covers and the looks of the books, and also, I do like a fantasy man. So I'm always fantasy of the world for someone, because it takes a lot of imagination to bring all this stuff together. But without any further ado, Hughes, all the way from Northampton. Ross,
yep,
welcome to the Outcast Create channel. Thank you for being here. And again, my apologies for the delay from yesterday, and I hope we didn't waste too much of your time. That's not the norm. No. Very good. So before we get into your book series, and I also want to talk about your writing techniques, your approach to writing a book, because it's always very different for each author. And I know there'll be a few budding or aspiring people, because I know so many people who want to write their first book, because they're always coming up and telling me this. So I think it'd be interesting for them to hear about your writing techniques. But before that, we're going to do some quick fire questions to assess what your kind of cultural upbringing was. And you were a guy who was 10 years old when the Lord of the Rings trilogy dropped at cinemas. So you had a slightly different time period to myself when I was growing up. What is the first movie you can remember your folks taking you to see on the big screen?
It's funny you should set it up like that. I think it might have actually been Lord of the Rings.
Really?
I think it might have been. I don't remember 100%, but
but that was one of the. Is that one that had a big impact at the time?
Oh yeah. I remember more than watching it at the cinema. I remember when we first got it on VHS videotape, and I would rewatch Fellowship of the Ring over and over.
I don't know if you know this, but the Lord of the Rings trilogy on VHS was the last film ever to be released on VHS.
Really?
It was the last. The trilogy was the last VHS release in the VHS market before they then went completely over to DVD and, of course, ultimately Blu-ray. What was the last film that you paid for a ticket to go and see at the cinema?
The Naked Gun. The new Naked Gun.
Okay. Fantastic.
Nice choice.
Do you have a TV show? And we can... Normally I tell people since 1997, but in your case, I don't even need to specialise that. Is there a TV drama show that you've watched during your lifetime that you've gone, oh, this is good, I need to watch all the episodes?
Most recently springs to mind The Gentleman, but that's a bit of a shorter one. Just one season.
That is a good show. Yeah, very good show. What about a little bit further back than that?
Avatar: The Last Airbender was really good when I was a kid. I loved that.
Avatar: The Last Airbender, not to be confused with James Cameron's Avatar for people watching now too.
No, talking about the original animated series, yeah.
yeah, indeed. Fantastic stuff. Okay. Do you have a favourite movie of all time? I don't have to be your favourite movie of all time, but one that you can sort of whack on at any time to veg out to. You know, it's raining, it's Sunday, you're stuck in the house. What movie is Hughes going to put on to veg to?
Just because I was thinking about it recently, I really like the Disney John Carter film, which I know is quite controversial. A lot of people don't like it. But
the John Carter from Mars.
Great. No.
Yeah. The books it's based on are really, really good too.
This is going to surprise you, actually, but I went to the cinema to see that. That was one of those films that got trashed by the critics before it was even released. Everybody said it was going to be a turd. So we went to watch it in the afternoon because I thought, let's see it on a really big screen. It was a big 70mm print, Odeon, Leicester Square. We came out of the film and I went, that was actually all right. Yeah, it weren't the best thing ever, but that was actually, I quite liked that. And my mate was like, yeah, I quite liked it as well. Stupid, cute animal that jumps around and everything. But yeah, it was
I feel like it's a comfort film for me.
Yeah, I like that movie. I think it's a good sci-fi B movie, very kind of Flash Gordon, and I wanted to see another one, but you know, it bombed. So unfortunately, we didn't get it. But yeah, I like that film. I think the cat agrees because I can hear him nodding. So fantastic. Let's do some quick fire questions about books. First fantasy novel you ever picked up and read?
Well, my dad read Lord of the Rings to me when I was a kid, but maybe the most impactful one is the one I made a video on recently. Maybe the most impactful one was Sword in the Storm. Sword in the Storm by David Gemmell. It's one I read really young, and it inspired me to really get into fantasy and read all of Gemmell's other books. And it was like the beginning, as I recall.
the Sword in the Storm. And did that sort of set you off? What made you pick that book when you went in? Did you go into a bookstore and buy that yourself?
I don't even remember the experience of buying it. It was when I was very young. I expect it must have been bought for me from my parents when I was a kid.
I'm curious to know. Yeah, maybe they got it for you, especially if your dad was reading you out Lord of the Rings before bedtime. What a cool dad.
Really?
I mean, I'm curious to know, especially when people sort of first find books for themselves. You know, you're normally around kind of 11, 12, 13. You started going into, well, in our case, W.H. Smith's to the book section. And I'd always go straight to either the horror section or the fantasy section. And the first thing, of course, that you see with any book is the cover, or as people call it, the jacket in our industry. And then you read the back of the jacket, which is known as the blurb, or the back blurb. But if it was a fantasy book, I wouldn't do either of those things. I would open the book and I wanted to see how cool the map was on the inside of the book. That's what I would buy a fantasy book depending on how cool the map was and how cool the world looked on the map. What made you pick a book in that genre when you were younger? I mean, not now.
I would say the blurb. And I think when I was a kid, I would cheekily read the first page or two if I was in a bookstore to get a sense of the writing style and if I would enjoy it.
Right. Okay. And which writer's writing style would you say you like the best?
I would say Gemmell writes like heroic fantasy, so more fast-paced, character-focused. And I've really gotten into pulp fantasy as I've grown older and read Conan the Barbarian, Robert E. Howard, and Fritz Lieber's stories about Fafford and the Grey Mouser. So I kind of prefer faster-paced, action-packed fantasy rather than slow-paced political intrigue.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you on that. That, I mean, it's interesting how your tastes can change over time. So what was there a catalyst moment when you decided you wanted to become a writer of fantasy novels? Was this a key moment or a key individual that maybe influenced that?
It's been literally as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, I would make little booklets out of folded up paper, and write rip-offs of Star Wars, while my friends wrote rip-offs of Star Trek. I tried to write a book when I was 16 and send it off to a publisher, but it wasn't quite good enough to get anywhere.
Was this all was this handwritten stuff in exercise books, or were you writing on a computer already?
By the time I was 16, it was a computer. Yeah.
Okay. And who was the first publisher you attempted to submit something to?
I'm not sure back then, but I think DAW Books was the first one I applied to most recently, when I was initially going to publish my first book, A Dead Wizard's Dream.
Okay, yeah, which is currently available on Amazon. We'll show people that in just a second. And how many times did you submit that to publishers before you decided to go ahead and do it yourself?
I submitted it to a bunch of them, but a lot of them didn't even get back to me, and some of them would get back to me 3 or 6 months later. They have a very slow processing rate. And I just decided that I wanted to get my books out into the world quicker than that.
Right. So how long did it take you to write the first draft of this?
I started writing it just after I left university, so 21-ish, and I didn't publish until I was 28. So I started writing what I thought was going to be a single story, but it ended up being the whole Convent series, so 6 books.
Right, and what was the time span? Yeah, but that's quite an achievement. What was the time span between you writing the first book in the Convent series and you completing book number 6?
About 8-9 years.
Okay, so you started in your 20s and finished it in your 30s. Is that fair?
Yeah.
And what time span? What was the typical writing period for one novel, if there was an average?
Very difficult to say in those early days because it ended up being 6 books instead of 1. But since then, if all goes smoothly, I can write a book in about 3 months. That was sort of how long it took me to write the standalones more recently, set in the same world.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I'm just gonna share your website here. So this is nice. Well, so I'm very interested to know your approach to this, because the first book series I ever wrote, which hasn't been published, was a fantasy thing called The Prophecy of the Witch King. It was 3 books, and I used to write them in exercise books because I didn't have a computer, because this is back in the days when people didn't earn personal computers. This was in the 80s. So, but the first thing I did was I drew the map, and then I drew a character list out, and then I sort of, it was very old school. It was very boring in George R.R. Martin's world. Another adventure about 8 guys that go from A to B, and carry out a quest. And that kind of was my book, although it started somewhere else, and then you kind of met the heroes, and they kind of fit into the journey. I'm interested in what was your approach. Did you sit down and do a lot of plotting? When did you draw the map? Just talk us through it a bit.
Yeah, I did a ton of plotting in a notebook, and also made notes and Word documents. A lot of plotting. I'm not a pantser. You would not call me that. I didn't do the map until very late in the process, I would say. I think a lot of people always say they're character first writers nowadays, which I don't really feel like I am at all. I always feel like I'm much more plot driven. So I always come up with the plot first, and then the characters fit the plot as needs. That's the way my brain works. That's the way it makes sense to me. So beginning with The Dead Wizard's Dream and the Convent series, I knew I wanted to write an epic fantasy series. And I knew I wanted it to be centered around a type of evil magic, So there's this form of magic that can suck people's souls that's centered around the antagonist. Okay. So, plot first is my style.
I think that's good. So you did quite a lot of plotting. So did you plot the story from beginning to end for all 6 books, or did you just plot a big epic story and you realized later that it was going to be 6 books? How did that pan out?
This is very complicated, many drafts. So yes, I plotted it out, but then especially those first few books that I was writing, I would replot and rewrite a lot as I was going along. But yeah, I did have a plan from the get-go. I always have a plan to work towards. Otherwise, the scene can go awry when people say characters take control of a scene sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting phrase. I love that. Characters take control of a scene. Yeah, that does happen, actually. I've never thought of it consciously like that. But
especially because in plot first, a lot of my characters, I don't come up with their detailed traits until later as I'm writing the story. Just something will inspire me from the setting, like, oh, this is a cool addition to the story for them to have this character trait. So then things don't always work out the way I expected.
Now, your world has a huge expanse of ocean, and some people would say quite a lot of islands there. Is there more, on the wall of the Ross Hughes Command Centre, is there a more detailed version of this map? For example, have you got names for all these different islands?
Not for all those different islands, because those are the home of the goblins. So,
okay.
The people would describe them as savages. That means I haven't named every single island, just the center one, really.
Okay. All right. Basically,
but yeah, I have detailed maps for everything, and I have detailed maps that extend beyond this map of more of the world I've created in the short stories and in future books.
Now, I'm assuming because it's the fantasy world, you've probably got, and there are certainly a few marks on here, you've probably got a few big cities and a few big fortresses and this kind of thing. So when you find your characters traveling to those places, do you sit down at any point, whether it's before, during, or after the process, and sketch out a little map of the city and the different quarters and the different districts and maybe what the castle looks like? Do you ever kind of sketch those things out so you can kind of keep track of it, if that makes sense?
I do, especially for battle scenes. Like if I want to try and really create a scene in the reader's mind, create the layout of a city or a certain formation of forces, I will try and do that. But not always. Sometimes, like if you're describing a comparatively boring scene, but just setting up the journey, characters just talking, getting things going, sometimes it's better to keep the pacing quicker and keep the reader's attention.
Yeah, less is more, so to speak.
Yeah, that's something I've learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, the most valuable piece of advice I was ever given as a writer by another very successful writer was, he said, if you can say what you've written in 200 words, in 2 words, say it in 2. And I took that to heart when I went back and edited my first novel. And he was absolutely right. And I was able to cut out so much waffle. Like, oh, yeah, I could say that in a sentence instead of, 3 paragraphs or whatever. So, do you edit your own novels? Or do you get someone else in to do that?
Yeah, I commission artists to do the covers, but I do my own editing, yeah.
Okay. And now with AI being as advanced as it is, do you think you'll probably just get covers done by AI in future to save money, or will you still go to your artists? Because the covers are very good for your books, it has to be said. Yeah,
I feel like AI is not quite at the level it needs to be to create covers on its own. You would still need to edit them, from what I've seen. So I think I'll stick with artists for now, but it's a possibility in the future. I know there's a big stigma against it, but I feel like it's going to become so commonplace that, the stigma's not going to last, I don't think.
It won't, because the industry's already doing it. They're lying and saying they're not, but they are.
Yeah, of course they are.
I think,
because I do like the covers of your books. They're very striking.
Thank you.
I don't know what this lady's face looks like, but the rest of her's certainly working for me. Is there I'm guessing it's the same artist for this series of books, right? That you
no, actually. No, a few different ones for the first few books, and then I found one I liked, and got her to do, I think, the last few covers for the Convent series. And then, yeah, I've used a bunch of different artists. Yeah.
So, yeah, because they do have, they've got a sort of, they've got very epic stories and looks. I do love this one. We know we're going to get some big major undersea battles of Aquaman proportions in this book. Yeah, and I liked also this one was great as well. Try and make that a bit larger. There we go. Because it's quite unusual, these people that are coming out, and it really made me look.
Yeah, they are the undead army chasing the protagonists throughout the series.
Yeah, I kind of I'm getting a kind of Walking Dead vibe from this, which was interesting. So, I mean, what would you say have been your creative influences when you've been doing this stuff?
All the books I read growing up, I think. David Gemmell, like I say, the Dragonlance series that we were talking about before the show.
Yeah, did you read the original Dragonlance trilogy, the first one?
That Chronicles, is it?
Yeah, Dragons of Autumn Twilight.
Yeah,
Dragons of Winter something or other.
I actually read Legends first, Dragonlance Legends, which comes after. So that kind of has a special place in my heart just because that's where I found the series. But yeah, I did read Chronicles.
I think Dragons of Spring Dawning is the third one. I have the original trilogy, first print run of those three books in the shed somewhere. And I remember absolutely loving them when I first read them. I would have been about 17 at the time. When I tried to reread them when I was around 32, and I just couldn't get into them at all. I just thought this writing's actually quite poor. And maybe that's because they were designed for a certain market at a certain time and emulate their style. I don't know how you feel about them now.
Yeah, I haven't been back to reread them in a long time, to be fair. I do worry that if I went back to read some of my favorites, it might be a case of rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, I mean, that was
a lot more analytical now, and maybe I wouldn't enjoy them as much. But
so they originally Dungeons and Dragons, which I played avidly as a teenager, probably up until I was about 21. And then I realised important things like girls were far more important. But the last campaign I ever did, role-playing campaign I ever did, was this one, which was the Dragonlance series. And the people who started D&D realised that in all the modules and things that they had, they didn't really have a story in their adventures that focused around dragons, even though the game was called Dungeons and Dragons. So the Dragonlance series was designed specifically to address that. That's why they did it. And I have to say, I really loved it. These adventure modules were absolutely fantastic, and each one had a great cover, really fired the imagination. They all had very different settings. I haven't got any specific memories of gaming these, but I do remember it was a lot of fun. And we had our games group that came around and played every Sunday for the best part of a year. And there were 14 of these modules. And I found when I was writing my books around that time, these kind of things would influence my writing style. I don't know if you found that, because you said you were writing from a young age. So did you, for example, if you were reading Magician by Raymond E. Feist, he's got quite a particular style. Did you find that was influencing the things you were working on at the time?
Yeah, for sure. I think everything I've read has probably had some influence on me, whether it's negative or positive. Like, I don't want to do that in my writing, or I do want to do this. Or yeah.
Here's a question from Keith in the chat. And Keith, thanks for being there. yesterday. Appreciate you. Speaking of AI, is he afraid of the competition AI books may bring in the future? Interesting question. What do you think?
No, I'm not afraid. I just think it is what it is, and it's still going to be a merit-based system. So if I can write a good book, hopefully it will still do well, no matter what.
I'm not worried about AI books. I mean, I'm sure they'll get churned out, but I think they'll lack soul. And I think, especially long-time readers will definitely pick up on quite quickly. Did you ever read a book called, I think it was called The Stone and the Flute? By a German author. The Stone and the Flute, yeah.
No.
I think it was called.
That
was one that I read that was, that was markedly different from any other book I'd ever read. And I'll tell you why it was different. Halfway through the book, the main character turned into a goat. And it's not like something that happened a couple of chapters in. You're in this massive fantasy epic that's going a certain direction. You're about halfway through, and I just found it on Amazon. Here you go, in case you want to read it. Then suddenly,
is he a goat for the rest of the story?
I don't want to spoil it, but suddenly he's turned into a goat, and I was like, "What the f is happening?" And then suddenly it's all told from this goat family's narrative, and he doesn't quite understand why his life's changed. But then you saw like this perspective of life as a goat, and there's like 2 chapters of kind of chewing grass in fields and avoiding being eaten by wolves. And I was kind of like, where's this going? It did pay off in the end, but Jesus, it took a while to get there. This book is huge, by the way. I think I might still have it somewhere.
You were just as confused as the character. So.
I was very confused.
Yeah, that sounds like an old plot twist.
Didn't quite know what was going on now. So when you're writing, there's a lot of people that reach out to me all the time, and they want to write their first book and all this kind of thing. You're on your you've been writing professionally for about 10 years now, roughly, give or take.
Yeah.
What 2 pieces of advice would you give to young Ross Hughes at the beginning of that journey that you've learned over the last 10 years that you would say to him now?
I always think the most useful piece of advice is just to get words on the page, to write a draft, even if it's a bad draft. You can always edit something you've written. You can't edit a blank page.
Yeah.
The number one.
That's great advice. Always write. Writers are very good at finding excuses not to write.
Oh, I'm queen of it.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that. So, just write stuff, even if it's bad. At least you've got something to work with then. Yeah, it's a really good piece of advice. What's number 2?
I guess I went into it not knowing just how much I was going to have to do marketing-wise. So maybe the second piece of advice would just to be aware and start building a following as early as physically possible. Because the earlier you start building a following, even if it's before you've written anything.
I'm glad you segued into that, because that was my next topic, marketing. How you've got a website, I've got a website, we're both authors. How vital is it for people to have their own website if they're planning on writing for a career, maybe self-publishing, probably going to produce a trilogy or something like that?
I would say if you had to prioritize, if you're on a budget, I would not prioritize a website. I would prioritize a mailing list. So join as many group promos, newsletter swaps as you can with reader magnets, stories you can give away for free, and try to build a following that way. A mailing list is a dedicated following that you can email when you have a release. have a launch. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you use something like MailChimp? Was it MailChimp that I used to have for that?
Yeah, I tried MailerLite, but then I went back to MailChimp because it was better.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I used to have MailChimp. Yeah. So having a mailing list, really good piece of advice. What other marketing? Because it's a big market, and also just aside from fantasy being a big market, you know, Amazon is a free-flowing river, and a lot of people are self-publishing books on there. What else do you do to make your book stand out? What else do you do to attract new readers to your book series and let them know it's there?
Again, I think the biggest thing is reader magnets. If you've got something you can give away for free to hook a reader in, like the short stories from my Chronicles of Maradoon series.
So just explain to somebody listening now who might not be familiar with all the ins and outs of self-publishing and the things around that. What is reader magnets?
It's just a story or a novelette or whatever that you give away for free in exchange for the recipient signing up to your mailing list.
Right.
So then you're building a following that way.
There's a good, and for anyone watching who kind of wants a bit more detail on that, there's a good article on, you know, what is a reader magnet and why is it useful on the Kindle Entrepreneur website.
Now, I think the two best websites that I use are Story Origin and BookFunnel. So,
yeah, tell us about those.
Yeah, shout out to them.
Well, tell us about them. How do you use them? How are they helpful?
They're useful for setting up newsletter swaps for other authors and for setting up group promotions where you have, you know, you can all market this group promotion with all of your short stories or all of your books if you're doing a sales promo. So it's just really helpful for finding other readers. Yeah.
Can I just check, is this a Story Origin website?
Yep.
One?
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's often, so this is very much a kind of, it's like you create an account, and this is a website that helps you market your book through various means. Is that a fair summary? Yeah.
Yeah, I use it to give away review copies and audiobook review copies. So yeah.
And does this cost an aspiring author anything to join? Is there a fee involved or a monthly subscription, or is this all completely free?
There is, unfortunately. Now, it was free when I joined in its early stages, but now I pay £90 a year, I think it is.
Okay, so it's not a terrible amount of money. And do you think you're getting your money's worth from it on a yearly basis for 90 quid?
I would have to say so. I think Story Origin is the best one. Yeah.
You're getting at least 90 quid's worth of book sales from here.
Hard to say where they all come from, but yes.
Yeah. How do you sorry, before I go on to pricing, tell us, you mentioned two sites. What was the other one?
BookFunnel.
BookFunnel. You see, I'm not familiar with. I have heard of this one, but I'm not familiar with BookFunnel at all. Now, is that a similar kind of setup?
Yeah. Does much the same thing.
So, I mean, if a budding author was going to have either BookFunnel or Story Origin, and I'm guessing there's a cost involved with BookFunnel as well. Which one would you?
A little bit more expensive, yeah.
Right. Which one would you say is better for them to have? Do you think?
I use Story Origin the most now, but as far as I'm aware, they don't have a function yet for transferring files to Mobi. So I use BookFunnel to do that because it's nice and easy on there.
Okay, so you're transferring files to Mobi, and again, for the uninitiated, what's Mobi apart from the singer, who I'm familiar with?
The type of format for ebooks.
Okay.
Or Mobi or PDF. Yeah.
But of course, you can, if you want to do an ebook or Kindle, shall we say, and you have an account on Amazon and you're creating your books there, you can do that directly there without necessarily needing this as a tool.
Yeah.
So why would you, if that's all you're using this for, what's the additional benefit of using this as opposed to just creating ebooks on?
Because I'm giving the reader magnets away through BookFunnel and Story Origin, not through Amazon. So
okay, so this is helping you to expand your audience as well, because there's other people accessing this, and there are people that come on here to look for the free book magnets, etc. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that all makes sense. How do you decide the pricing for your books?
Just try to stay competitive. Obviously, you have to think about the amount of time you poured into it, but I think you just have to, especially for a starting author and aspiring author, you have to try and stay competitive, don't you?
Yeah.
So look at the market and price appropriately.
I mean, I've got 16 books out. I don't think I've ever, and this might sound stupidly naive of me, but I don't think I've ever gone onto Amazon and gone, how much is a comparatively similar book to this? I've always priced, when I did my first book in 2017, I priced it so that I knew that I would earn at least a minimum of £1 every time I sold a book. And that's when the Amazon tariffs were extremely high. And you still kind of went through the third-party printing setup, which has gone now. It's all direct now. But do you remember when it was the third-party printing setup as well? I forget the name of them.
I've always been direct for Amazon, but yeah.
Okay, so when I first started with them, which was 2015, you had to go through Ingram Spark to then get a book up on Amazon, or there was Ingram Spark and there were a couple of others. And I think what happened eventually was they could see this market was expanding. So Amazon purchased all of those companies and brought them all in-house, and now it's all direct. So that's how that change came about. Yeah. So, so do you ever kind of look at the profit margin, for example, and go, okay, this book is 350 pages. I'm going to charge £12.99. I should make £3.49 on each book, or is it more geared towards the prices of similar books in the marketplace?
Yeah, so definitely an aspect of that. So a bit of both. Feel like can't price too highly. I see some indie authors pricing their books really highly, and I don't know, maybe it works for them, but I feel like it could be off-putting. Yeah.
So I mean, because most of your books are pretty. The Kindles are around for your books. The Kindles are all around kind of the £8 mark, I think, from what I can see on here. And the printed books of yours are more kind of in the $13 to $14.99 kind of bracket. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, a bit more than I used to pay for a paperback when I was a kid. I remember the good old days getting them $6.99, $7.99. But
mate, I can remember when they were $1.99. I'm a bit older than you. Yeah.
I'd get them used on Amazon for pennies. Yeah.
Rachel, what was that?
Oh, I was just like, yeah, we used to be able to get them for like $3.99 was what a paperback used to be when I was collecting fantasy novels. And now you can't even look at one for that price.
Yeah. I mean, it is, yeah. Do you bring your books out in hardback first?
In what, sorry?
Softback? Do you bring your books out in hardback, or would you just do softback and Kindle?
Usually just e-back and paperback. E-book, sorry, and paperback.
Yeah. So you've not had
an audio book for a long.
So you've not had one of your books produced as a hardback? Yeah.
No. KDP, the service I use on Amazon, has actually introduced a way to produce hardbacks now. I just haven't really gone around to looking into it.
mate, I would highly recommend it. This is my latest book in hardback, and I've got to tell you, it's so much nicer. The quality of it and everything, it's just nice. It feels got that weight to it and everything. And then the hardback. And what I've done, I've been quite clever with it as well, because this is a rave book, and I've put a trance cover on the hardback, and I've put a house cover on the softback. So some people are buying two. It's quite clever marketing.
Nice.
Yeah, there you go. A bit for you.
Yeah, I might have to look into making hardbacks one day.
You had a book there that you held up earlier, which is now, this is out of the Convent series. I think it was a vampire thing. Do you want to hold it up and tell us about it?
Yeah, it was The Night Comes Alive. It's a gothic fantasy set in the same world, set in Maradoom. Same world as the Convent series. So
it's set in the same. It's set in the same world, but it's The Night Comes Alive. I do like that title. Yeah, tell us about that.
Flying on up here that you can't see.
Yeah, tell us about that briefly without any big major spoilers.
It's about a young boy called Spot who can see vampires where no one else can. So it's about his adventures, about him finding out whether he's crazy, trying to convince his friends and family of what he sees. Not to give spoilers.
I really do like the sound of that.
Yeah, is that your newest book?
No, I just brought it out because I thought it sounded like Rebel Rose might enjoy it earlier.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Fantastic. So let's talk about reviews, right? Because your first book, which, as I understand it, is more of a collection of short stories that sets up the world. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think I actually published the first book of the Convent series before the first anthology. But yeah, there's 7 anthologies set in Maradoom called Chronicles of Maradoom that are out now. And I've written the 8th, and it'll be published soon, possibly before Christmas, if I can wrangle the cover.
This is book 1, and this is kind of an introduction to the world, but it's not a single narrative story, is it?
That is the first book of the series rather than an anthology. So yeah, that is the first part of the linear story. Okay,
so you've got 77 reviews for this, which is a great number, and trending at kind of 4 stars out of 5, which on Amazon is good. How important and how significant have these reviews been in terms of helping, and how long did it take to get 77 from the point that this was published?
I think it had 90 last time I checked on Amazon.com. But anyway, it's very important to get reviews and very difficult. I think I've seen a lot of people say it's like 1 in 100 readers will leave a review. So yeah, it's partly a numbers game, partly a quality game. So you need both quality and quantity, I guess. But yeah, it's difficult and important. So everyone who says it is, listen to them. There's always a group of friends that will buy every book that I do, and they're always promising to leave a review, and they're the hardest people to get to leave reviews. Are your mates? It's like, especially if they're not writers. Oh yeah, no, I'll do it next week, and it's really important. Just a couple of lines. Sometimes I like email them samples and say it could be something like this. Don't copy and paste it, make it your own. But yeah, unfortunately, I only really have one auntie that tends to leave reviews. Other than that, I have to convince strangers.
Right. Let's talk about a couple of other things. There are a couple of very kind of big sci-fi and fantasy orientated shows around the world. There's a big event in Iceland once a year. The books are very much part of it. I think sometimes there's some role-playing games and things. There's a big thing in Hammersmith in London once a year, I think, which is called Dragon Meet, I think it's called. and there's a lot of gaming, but there's also like fantasy authors do come and do talks, or sometimes they have a little stall and they're selling signed copies, you know, meeting people in person. Do you go down that track at all? Is that something you've looked at?
Yeah. I actually haven't done Dragon Meet. I have to look into that one, but I've done other Comic Cons in the middle of London, Birmingham, all around the country, selling signed novels. Yeah.
Well, tell us about that. How's that been? Because I know that normally if you book a stall, as opposed to being, let's say, invited as a guest, there's a fee involved. And if you're doing a print run of, I don't know, 50 books to take with you, that's usually going to cost you a bit. You've got to stay in a hotel, etc., etc. Do you find the cost involved of doing something like that negates the profit that you make while you're selling books there? Or is it more about getting out there, meeting the fans, selling books and expanding that fan base? Is that what makes the cost of it worthwhile?
Yeah, definitely. You don't always break even, so sometimes it's about getting your name out there and meeting people. Yeah.
What other conventions have you done you'd recommend to authors in this genre having a crack at? Maybe
there's a few different companies that do Comic Cons. Showmasters is a really good one. They do one in the Olympia in London, in Birmingham and elsewhere. There's UKCGF, if you can remember all those letters. They do some good Comic Cons. There's one anime and gaming cons. I think they're called. And more recently, there's a couple of smaller companies set up called Bolt Events and Striker Events, I think it was. So there's quite a lot of different companies that I've tried out across the country.
Right. So here is UKCGF. I was able to remember it.
Nice.
Yeah, and quite because cosplay, you know, going to conventions and all that, it's not niche as it was before. It's quite a burgeoning, it's quite a growing market. They're getting busier and busier. Plus, you know, the people, the meet and greets, the sign-ups with famous people. My most frequent collaborator, Jason Flemyng, just did one in Newcastle. He said he had a lot of fun. So here we go. We've got Somerset, 27th of September. Well, it's November now, so that's gone. Exeter, Cornwall, Plymouth, and then other dates. So it's just been a whole load, 4 in the last 6 weeks alone. So there you go, around the country. Rachel, that could almost be you, couldn't it, in that little sort of costume there?
Oh, yeah, that's definitely my kind of thing, that is.
Thought so. Which one of these, so book a trading space is where you'd go as an author if you were looking at this, right? You go to book a trading space.
Yep.
And if we're happy to accept your booking, you'll receive a booking link to pay and receive an invoice. So basically, I guess you pitch who you are and what you want to sell, and they get back to you with a yes or no and a price. Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah.
And what kind of money are we looking at here, as for an author to have a stall on one of these?
For the bigger shows, it's probably like £200, £250, but for the much smaller companies, it's much less. It can be £50. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it can be quite reasonable for some of the smaller shows. I would imagine the smaller shows are more fun.
They can be. I think there's something about when a show gets too big, people won't circle around as much as they would in a smaller show. You know, by the time they get to the end, they don't want to circle back to the beginning. So I feel like you get more of a sense of community, or you see the same people more in a smaller show.
James Evans says, I met Danny Webb and Colin Baker at some of these events. Danny Webb, of course, is a good friend of mine. So, and as I'm sure you found out, James, really nice bloke. I haven't met Colin Baker before, but I'm told he's really lovely. So are there any other marketing because this all comes under the banner of marketing. Are there any other marketing tactics or suggestions you would use or recommend for people trying to get their brand out there, trying to get their book series out there? It's probably best for people that have got a series, I think, rather than a single novel.
Yeah. There's multiple channels. I try advertising. I do paid advertising on like Facebook, BookBub, and Amazon, as well as there's like paid newsletters with large numbers of subscribers. They'll like shout out your book for a fee, like Book Barbarian, Book Gorilla. BookBub is the big one. Fussy Librarian is another one. So yeah,
I've heard of BookBub before. Is it literally a case of you pay money, they agree to give a shout out, or are they a bit more like, well, send us what you've got, let's have a look, we want to see if it's not a load of crap, or that will they just take the money and run? How does it work?
Yeah, I believe there's an evaluation process, definitely with BookBub, because I have been rejected for a featured deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and how effective have you found this as one example in terms of your sales going up or down?
Oh, they're actually, especially the advertising through BookBub and Amazon, it's really effective. My problem is, earning more than I spend. You have to find the sweet spot of finding ongoing profitable ads.
Yeah, you've still got a day job.
Yeah.
This. Yeah. And we've all only got so much energy in the day. When and how do you make sure each week you allocate time to write? How do you manage that time with the other pressures in life, relationships, work? I think you work at your family garden centre. I read somewhere on your biography. At least you can take time off when you need it, I would imagine. But how do you balance all that, and how do you prioritise, and how and when do you prioritise the writing?
Yeah, I try and do writing, say, 3 evenings a week, and all day Sunday. When I say all day, I mean I obviously have breaks to just watch TV and have lunch and stuff, because you need breaks in between. So I guess you could kind of describe the way I do it as writing sprints, although I've never really thought of it that way. But I'll say relax and watch TV for 20 minutes and then try and write for 40 minutes. So structure things by the hour. And if I've got 4 or 5 hours, I can hopefully write 2,000 words in an evening, 500 words an hour. That's obviously if all goes well. Some nights you just stare at a screen and nothing happens because you're just thinking about all the things you might write.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure Rachel can relate to that one. Just remind people watching, if you've got any, we're almost out of time, so if you've got any questions for us, chuck them in the chat now. I've got one here from earlier from the Proctor file. Question: could you give an example of a character trait that emerged while you were working on the plot, and did you use it to solve a problem or create one? That's a great question.
Yeah. I guess what first comes to mind is a character from one of my books called Legend of the Lullaby. I started writing this book about a band of smugglers, and for no real good, well thought out reason, at the beginning I made one of them a lagahoo. It was just something I thought was really cool from Caribbean folklore.
Right.
And as I wrote the story, I wanted to give that meaning, so I used it to sort of show the bond between the characters. So there was a scene where the lagahoo felt as though he might be hated for what he was, and the smugglers like reassured him. And, you know, I never saw that scene coming. I never planned it. But it just worked out that way. And I thought it was quite cool.
Well, what's the difference between... because fantasy back in the 80s was just fantasy novels that was it. That was that genre. There were no subgenres. It was fantasy. It was whether it was Conan, whether it was goblins, you know, whether it was The Magician or Lord of the Rings. It was all fantasy. Now we've got several subgenres of fantasy. You named a couple of them earlier. I'd quite like to hear your take. What's the difference between fantasy and high fantasy? What is high fantasy in your
not view? A great deal, I would say. High fantasy is just fantasy that involves magic. So you can have low fantasy. It does not.
That's interesting because that wasn't my take on high fantasy. I don't know why I had something different in my head, but okay, that involves magic. Okay.
There probably are different definitions.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, I know you're probably right. I'm far more likely to be wrong. I just heard the phrase being bantered about a lot, and it seemed to apply to books that were very kind of big and epic, but also kind of used elements that were outside of traditional fantasy norms. For example, it might be a fantasy trilogy, but there'd be a rocket ship in it, or you know, so it would have kind of would have a toe in science fiction. So,
yeah, so that's high fantasy.
Some people would label that high fantasy, or it would have, you know, different technologies that you wouldn't normally see exist in a sword and sorcery type environment. So I got that kind of vibe from it, but that's interesting to hear that. And what other genres are there within the fantasy genre? You mentioned the Conan stuff. Was that pulp fantasy? Yeah. Or you had another phrase for it, I think.
Yeah, high fantasy, low fantasy, which is fantasy without magic. There's urban fantasy, which generally tends to be contemporary, set in our world or a similar world, with like modern technology and such.
Right.
Obviously, there's epic fantasy, which I would describe my first series as. I like to describe all my books differently when I write them. So I've described one of them as a gothic fantasy, another one as an underwater fantasy, one as a military fantasy, one as a high fantasy. And there's heroic fantasy that David Gemmell writes, like I mentioned earlier. So there's a lot of subgenres, yeah.
Now, before we begin to wrap up, I know people will be upset with me if I don't ask about the giant crab creature. In fact, earlier on Twitter, people were expunging various theories about that when I posted the poster, our thumbnail for today. And
yeah, that's some really cool artwork.
Stephen Ransom put this classic GIF up. I thought it was great. And that's, of course, from Mysterious Island. Such a fantastic movie. Absolutely love that film. I remember watching that movie, knowing nothing about it, thinking it was an American Civil War film. And then suddenly the next thing I knew, there were giant crabs and creatures. And I was like, oh, this is fucking great. Love this. And I just thought I was going to watch a sort of John Wayne kind of cowboy type film, but set in the American Civil War, because that's how the movie starts. Yeah, tell us about the crab people. You know, people want to know. They're pestering me. So I feel you need to delve into that a bit before we...
Okay, well, the artwork is from Mantalantis, which is a book about a magical city on the back of a giant manta ray swimming through Maradoom's ocean.
So the city is on the back of a giant manta ray?
Yes. Yeah.
So how big is this manta ray then? It must be like miles... How many hundreds of miles across is the manta ray?
It was inspired by a piece of artwork I saw a long time ago, with a giant manta ray with like a giant shell on its back, and I thought, what if people burrowed into that shell and lived there?
Okay. Yeah, like it. So it's set. So this is now. Is this set in Maradoon?
Yeah. Although it's very separate from the other books because it's set in a city underwater.
Right. So, okay. So these guys make an appearance in that novel. Is that a standalone novel?
Yeah, standalone, set in the same world, and that is a vampire crab. You see on the screen, a vampire crab is a real creature in our world, but obviously it's different in my fictional world. And that's the protagonist, Louis Beaumont, Prince Louis Beaumont, the Dauphin, on the back there.
Right. Fantastic. There's a friend of mine who's got a channel called Gourd King, his name is. We don't know how, but we feel this crab creature is connected to him somehow. So, yeah.
With the googly eyes.
On some of my streams with him, you know where we were coming from.
There's a resemblance.
Fantastic. Yeah, the resemblance is quite uncanny. So, your books are all available on Amazon. The link for your website and so on is already there. If people want to have a quick look at the map of the world, I'll put the link up for that as well. There you go. So how many books have you got out total now?
19 out total now.
Damn. And is that enough to make you a living? Or is it, I mean, you know, you're not able to quit the day job yet?
No, I still got the day job.
So the goal is to keep going and hopefully expand the fan base, keep producing the books. So are your books always going to be set in this world, or do you have other genres you want to write in, or what?
No, I dabbled in sci-fi and wrote a space opera that's obviously not set in the same world. And the most recent book I published is Pitfall, which is I call it a post-apocalyptic fantasy, but it's kind of like a sci fantasy, you know, elements of science fiction.
Is that kind of like a Mad Max type?
Yeah, it was quite inspired by like Fallout, the Fallout video games, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm just trying to find it on Amazon. Fortunately, there's about 40 books with the same title. How helpful.
Yeah.
Let me put your name in as well. That would probably help.
So yeah, I may well venture out of the world of Maradoon again, but I do think it's fun for both me and readers to have a world to get invested in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the way this is kind of shaped a bit like a crown on the cover here. There we go.
Yeah, that's the peaks. Where the people live above a poisonous gas that's represented by the purple mist there. So people can only live on mountaintops.
Right. And hippie dragons also, by the looks of things. So, fantastic. Okay. Well,
long-time readers might have noticed the theme of zombies in my book, so there might be some zombies lurking in the mist. Yeah.
If people wanna follow you, are you on Twitter or Instagram or any of those?
I'm very inactive on Instagram, but yes, I have an Instagram account and a Twitter and Facebook. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Which one is best for people to follow you to keep an eye on what's coming out, what's going on?
Facebook and Twitter, I would say.
Facebook and Twitter. Okay. All right. So you're quite happy with people to follow you on Facebook? It's not a personal account or whatever.
No. I have my author page up on there.
Let me just see if I can get that up quickly before we go. Okay. Ross Hughes, one mutual friend. I don't think that's you. You didn't go to Hailing School, did you?
No.
Hang on. So it would be a page, right? It would be a page rather than people.
Yeah.
So are you? Can you send me the link real quick?
Yeah, it should just be facebook.com/Ross Hughes author.
Oh yeah. Oh, let me do that. Ross Hughes, author. All right. Is that author spelt the American way or the English way?
Don't we spell it the same way?
No, we don't. The Americans spell it without a U at the end. O-U-R is the English spelling of author, and the American spelling of author is just O-R at the end.
That's crazy. I thought we both spelled it O-R.
Yeah, afraid not. I've been debating that with people for ages. Yeah, most people are now just spelling author with an O-R at the end, and they're dropping the U in the UK because it's becoming more generic. Yeah, I found it very good. Let's chuck that in. So if you want to follow Ross or send him detailed questions about the crab people, then this is the link. There we go.
There actually are crab people in the story called Crochet, but that's not what the picture is of. So the spoiler.
There you go. So if you're looking for a story with crab people in it, you're not going to be disappointed. All right, good stuff. And there's various things like audio clips and stuff. Look, all right, Ross, thanks very much for coming on and talking about your writing technique and stuff like that, because I know there's not a lot of authors that are not always keen on getting into all that kind of stuff. And of course, us writers can be quite solitary fellows as well. We're not always keen to do podcasts. So very much appreciate you coming on.
No, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Don't be afraid to give us a call if you've got a new book coming out at some point in the future. You'd like to come back on and promote it. That'd be fantastic. So just to remind my guests, I've got 2 more podcasts coming up this week. We have one at the unusual time of 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. God, I have to get up at 9 o'clock. Unseemly. But it's going to be worth it because I'm interviewing DJ Slipmat, who is one of the biggest DJs on the music scene, full stop. And it's amazing that I've got him because he's quite hard to pin down. He does not have a lot of time. So he's on tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Also then on Sunday, I have first-time filmmaker King Nicky, whose interview I was supposed to do this Sunday, just gone, but for the same reason that I had to cancel yesterday. Unfortunately, we had to reschedule. But she has just completed her first short horror film called Apples. You can see it on her YouTube channel. She's also kind of just started a YouTube channel, so don't be afraid to go over there, give her a bit of support, show some love, hit the subscribe button. This is her first film. You can see it for free on her channel. Do check it out. I'm going to be talking to her, I think at 10 p.m. UK time on Sunday. It's going to have to be that time, actually, because I'm going to see the wild geese right before that. So, I think, Rachel, you're going to be on with me for probably the Sunday one, aren't you?
Yeah, I will be here.
Fantastic. Excellent. So, and then there's also more interviews coming between now and Christmas. I've got at least another, I think, 2 or 3 authors, among other things. We also are going to be having composer Bruce Brofton coming on. If you don't know who Bruce Brofton is, well, he's composed over 125 scores for feature films, and among those films are Silverado, which I have the vinyl soundtrack for in the box behind me, and also Young Sherlock Holmes, which I just got signed by Nick Rowe because I directed him in a movie. So he was good enough to sign it for me. It's somewhere around here. And he also did the score for that. So Nick was quite instrumental in making this interview happen. Bruce also did the music for The Boy Who Could Fly and a whole load of other iconic 80s films. And he did a lot of stuff in the 90s as well. He also did several big TV shows. So he's going to be a fantastic guest. Haven't locked down the date yet, but it will be this side of Christmas. One more quick question before we go from Dan Candy, one of my moderators. What would be a good entry book of Ross's to read? I guess what's the best segue book into the world? What one would you recommend?
Chronicles of Maradoon Volume 1 is an anthology of short stories that can be read in any order, and it's easy on your wallet as well.
Fantastic. There you go. Chronicles of Maradoon Volume 1. Available on amazon.com or .co.uk, depending on where you are. All right. Amazing. Okay. Well, that's it from us. I managed to... There you go. I was about to say I managed to get through it without... I cursed that, didn't I?
You did.
I cursed that, yeah. Thank you so much to my guest for coming on. Thank you so much also for Rachel for being here, just in case I passed out. I'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. for the Slipmat interview. Join me then. Till then.